Good morning and welcome to the Downtown Aviation Economy and Innovation Subcommittee for April, the month of April 2017. My name is Daniel Valenzuela and I'm honored to chair this subcommittee. I'm the District 5 council member for Central and West Phoenix, and I'm honored to be here with Vice Mayor Laura Pastor from District 4 and, of course, Councilwoman Thelda Williams from District 1. The first item is the call to the public. We do have a call to the public at the beginning and at the end of this subcommittee. In addition to those opportunities to speak, each item, for those who are watching or those who are, several people have caught on, but you can fill out a card for any one of these items, and we'll be sure to get to your comments specifically to that item as well. We don't see any cards for the opening call to the public. It's item 12. Yeah. So we don't see anything for the beginning, so we'll move forward for the approval of the meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion pass. Oh,
That was for February 22nd.
yes.
Yes.
Motion for the approval of the meeting minutes from February 22nd with motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Move to approve March 1st.
Thank you. Motion to approve March 1st meeting minutes.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you. The consent agenda, items 3 through 6, we can take them in one motion unless one of my colleagues would like to take it out or pull it out for more discussion.
I'm fine, I move approval.
I'll second.
Okay, we do have a motion for the consent agenda items 3 through 6. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
On this second item, on the next item, I would like to pull, it's for information only. There is one item I would like to pull,
Okay.
item 7.
Now, yeah, this is for information only, and you would like to pull item 7, key Phoenix Economic Indicators Quarterly Report.
Or like
And-
to,
And I, as far as I understand, this is just for information only and an opportunity for this subcommittee to let city staff know to come back at the next meeting with a
Okay.
full report.
I just have a question. That's all, and that's why. Okay. I just wanted to know, in the opinion of the quarterly report, what is the overall conclusion of this report as it relates to the economic vitality of the city?
We will make sure to
That's-
come back and share with the subcommittee.
Okay.
Some conclusions. I think
Thank
it's a
you.
fair question.
All right.
Okay, so items 7, 8, and 9 are for information. Any other questions on those particular items? No? Okay, we'll move on to item 10. Flight path update.
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, a very brief update today, and Jordan Feld, our Deputy Aviation Director, Planning Environmental, will make the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. It's been a little bit of time since we last met, so very quickly, on March 17th, we had the opportunity for oral arguments in City versus FAA. I would say it went very well. The discussion definitely focused on the peculiar steps FAA took to inform the community, as well as the lack of transparency as to when any decision was made. If you'll recall, our senators, McCain and Flake, were successful in getting into the National Defense Reauthorization for 2017, a provision for the FAA to come back to Phoenix, look at the significance of the flight path changes. Since the president signed that legislation in December of 2016, there's been no apparent effort by the FAA. So on March 31st, our senators sent a letter to the FAA formally requesting a status report on the NDAA implementations. So that is the news and notes since we last met. Happy to answer any questions or take any follow-on items.
Okay, thank you so much. Any questions or comments by my colleagues? I do have one card. Why don't we go there? Ms. Greta Rogers. Ms. Rogers, would you like to speak on this item?
Good morning, Chairman Valenzuela and members of the subcommittee. Before I comment on the airport flight paths, please speak into your mics if you have them, because the acoustics in this room are less than optimal. I don't live in the area of Central Phoenix where the flight paths have been extremely offensive to the residents there since they were changed. But I understand their concern and I am in concert with them. What I would like to know is, what does the FAA have to do for a community to update or pre-notify them that flight paths are going to be changed and an effective date for change, so that people have an opportunity to understand what's happening and to comment in public community forums before the effective date of the offensive, obliterating noise. And if they don't have a plan, they must have a plan. Just because they're up in the air doesn't give them prior right to be offensive. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Ms. Rogers, that is an extremely shared observation among city staff as well as a dozen cities across the country right now. This is the issue. The FAA really struggles with informing communities of their proposed changes and interacting with communities and getting input. It's the nature of our lawsuit. It's the nature of a dozen other lawsuits at the moment. So we are pushing hard to get FAA to change their current system of doing this.
I appreciate it. This has been a standing item on this agenda, or on this, at this subcommittee for more than a year now. And we'll continue to keep it here. It's a good opportunity to continue to get updates out and give people who are affected by this, these flights, the flight paths, to come out and speak directly with the policymakers and city staff and so on. So we'll thank you for always being prepared and for everything you're doing in the community, and thank you for in advance for your preparation for the next meeting as well. Okay, we'll move on, if it's okay with my colleagues. We'll move on to item 11, Terminal 4 Retail Concession Phase 2 Revenue Contract Solicitation Award Recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the subcommittee. I'm joined this morning by Paula Kuchars, who's our manager of terminal concession programs at Sky Harbor. What we would like to do today is hopefully change slides. Maybe it's not on. There we go. Is to discuss with you what is the final phase of our Terminal 4 retail concessions program. And this will be the final phase of Terminal 4 retail. You may recall that last year, this subcommittee and the City Council approved Phase 1 of the retail redevelopment. Most of those stores, if they have not already opened, are nearing completion of construction, and that change has occurred. So this will be our recommended awards for the final phase. As represented here on this map, these are the locations of the stores that we are recommending here today. And with your permission, I would like to now ask Paula Kuchars, once again, our Terminal Concessions Program Manager, to review the recommendations with the subcommittee.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. So here today, we're going to go through all of the packages that we're recommending for award. Just so you know, there are representatives of all of these companies in the audience today. I won't call them out, but they are all here today. So the first one is Package 9, and the recommendation is to Casa Unlimited Enterprises. They will open a new stand called azcentral.com, and they will bring to the airport the first Lucky brand store called Lucky Break, and this is the first airport store supported by that brand. And they will also bring the first Sky Harbor Brookstone to the airport. The second package is to Parodies Lagardère, and Parodies will bring TripAdvisor.com, which is the first TripAdvisor store at an airport in the country. And they will also bring back a favorite called Drugs and More, combined with a medical clinic called Mach 1. And this will be the first time we will have a medical clinic available at Sky Harbor that is not only open to the public but to employees as well. Package 11 is to Avila Retail Management, Development and Management. They will open a new stand called Connections, a travel accessory store called En Route, Sky Harbor's first Toomey store, and a lifestyle concept called Sonoran Southwest Living. Package 13 is also Avila Retail Development Management, and they will open 3 small indigenous Native American stores, and they are a passenger favorite. And Package 14, In Motion, will return with 2 stores, 2 concourse locations, and this is one of the largest growing categories in airport retailing. And Package 15, Dufree Phoenix Retailers Joint Venture. Will not only encompass duty-free, but also duty-paid, and it's the first time we're offering that opportunity to the passengers, so regular domestic passengers can actually shop some of the product in the duty-paid section, not the duty-free section that would only be available for international passengers. So this is the program as it looks today, with all of the stores from Phase 1 and Phase 2 populated on the map. And we know that you may be aware that 2 packages did not receive any responses, and we would like to know why. So after council awards Phase 2 of this process, we'd like to bring the operators in, talk to them on a one-to-one basis, and the transparency policy is then expired, so they can tell us honestly what we need to change, and of course we would come back to you with a recommendation to move forward on those locations.
So, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, the Aviation Department is requesting this subcommittee's referral to the Phoenix City Council to award Phase 2 of the Terminal 4 retail contracts as presented here today. And happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, any questions? Vice Mayor, do you want to?
I have one question regarding the transparency policy. Could you please explain the process as to why, if somebody wants to know, a company wants to know, for whatever reason, they were not chosen, why they have to wait after we vote on it? I'm not clear on the transparency. I know the clearness for me and council members, but I would like to know about businesses.
So the transparency policy covers the time between when the solicitation is issued until the time of award. There actually is a process that if people wanted to come and meet with you or meet with the airport director, there is a posted process that they can go through. It becomes a public process, and it is the standard transparency policy that the city has in place. It's no particular difference at the airport.
So my question then, my follow-up question is, this is all post-process. So what if there was something is discovered in the dialogue, in the piece of, there was some, I don't know what I want to say, something that there was questionable. And it's after the post process versus it being, I guess, during the process, because then we may discover something.
Councilman Venezuela and Vice Mayor Pastor, the solicitation process does allow, the minute that the award recommendations are posted, all of the folks that have submitted a response can come in and look at all the documents. There is an opportunity for a protest period, and we are in accordance with, the airport, the city's solicitation process.
And, well, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mr. Chair, Vice Mayor, at any point in the process, if there is something that is something untoward has been identified, raised, there is a vehicle for communicating that to the procurement officer or to the aviation director pursuant to the RFP, and staff can stop the procurement process and indeed Jim cannot recommend it forward if there's actually something that is not correct, not accurate, is inconsistent with what the rules were provided for during through the RFP. Similarly, the council can also do the same thing, whether at the subcommittee or the full council.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have any questions. I'd move approval of this. But I do have a question following that is, what two were not filled or had no entries?
Councilman Venezuela and Councilwoman Williams, there was a package that included a newsstand and 2 small souvenir stores, and there was an open concept, one singular location in the lobby that was not proposed on in the first package and was not proposed on in the second package either.
Paula, where was the newsstand physically
The
located?
newsstand was in the lobby as well. The 2 souvenir stores were on the concourses.
I said that's
Pre-security.
Security.
Free security, correct.
Okay.
Since there was no one bid on those items, what does the airport do now?
Mr.
What's the
Mr.
new
Chairman,
concept?
to Vice Mayor Pastor. So as Paula indicated, after council, once council, if the subcommittee recommends to full council and council awards these, then the transparency policy has expired. Then our intent is to bring in all of the proposers, those that were successful as well as those that were not, and then try to understand from them why there was no interest in these locations and to see what we could do to remedy that, and then we would come back with a recommendation to the subcommittee on a path forward with those 2 packages.
Mr. Chair, Vice Mayor, there are a range of alternatives that are available to the city, which could include going back to, as an example, the whole pool of proposers, going back to the proposers who were not successful, or going back to the whole wide world. And that's, I think, what staff is going to want to visit with the subcommittee about, is that there are alternative ways, if we can identify what the problem is, that will make this more interesting, market-ready, accessible, then we can come back and talk about if indeed we can identify how to fix it so people will want to pick these up. Then we have to then explore, well, then who are we going to pursue to fulfill those opportunities?
Okay. It's probably traffic, movement, probably hours.
Yeah, I think fundamentally, I think
That's just me guessing.
lobby locations
Pre- and
have
post-security.
pre-security have always been challenging for the airport, and we have a lot of stuff pre-security, and so I think we have reached kind of the upward limits, and because the security screening has actually fundamentally been working better, everything post-security is always more interesting because people want to get there first, and so we may have hit the limit of what can happen pre-security.
Thank you. Second. Sorry, I knew
No,
you were waiting
don't.
for me.
It's good. We have a motion and a second All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. We'll move on to item 12, Terminal 3 Concession Program Strategy and Request to Issue Revenue Contract Solicitation.
Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee, thank you for this opportunity. Now let's move down from Terminal 4 to Terminal 3. As the council is well aware, Terminal 3 is under a comprehensive remodel. So when the project is complete sometime late in 2018, it will be a brand-new terminal for Sky Harbor Airport. And so what we would like to do today is spend some time discussing what are our recommendations on a way to move forward with revenue contract solicitations for concessions within that new terminal when it opens in late 2018. The planning for the concessions in this building has been a multi-year task as we've been working with our concessions team as well as our concessions consultants and our architects and designers of the building to understand exactly how passengers will flow through this terminal, what the expectations are in terms of the numbers of passengers, the types of passengers, and the spaces that will be available in this new design. So this is a very different than what we've been talking about previously in Terminal 4, where you have more or less a fixed asset that has been there for years. This will be a completely new building. So we've completed that task and are now ready to make a recommendation with respect to how the concession program should be advanced in terms of revenue contract solicitations. So once again, I will ask Paula, our terminal concessions manager, to walk you through the program goals as well as our recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. So our program goals are posted in the RCS when it is released. These are our goals before you, and we strive always to increase opportunities for local and small business participation, to raise the quality and the uniqueness of Souvenir and all of our merchandise so that Sky Harbor continues to be distinctive, and to implement this program with the construction schedule. They're out there building, and we need to be ready so that the concessions are ready when the first plane arrives with passengers. So the RCS that we are proposing to release will be for a period of 10 years, one RCS, 4 contracting opportunities, 2 for food, 2 for retail. The retail respondents may win 1 of those packages. The food and beverage respondents may win 1 of the packages, either 1 of retail, 1 of food. Yes. This and similar to Terminal 4 in all of our work, there will be a small business component and outreach requirements through our EOD group. So again, like in Terminal 4, we will set the MAG like we did with all of the T4 retail solicitation. And also, there will be a pricing policy, a Street Plus 10 pricing policy. The airport will reserve the right to develop a consolidated receiving and distribution center, and also reserve the right in the future for a beverage pouring rights contract.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Okay, go back to that slide.
Sure.
Tell me what circumstances would be for you reserving the right to have the consolidated receiving and distribution center.
The circumstances would be if the airport feels that it is in the best efficiency for the operation of the airport in terms of delivery of goods from the non-secure area into the sterile area of the airport, that we need to control that access better and become more efficient from a safety and security and efficiency standpoint. Then we would come to the council and request permission to issue a RFP for a consolidated receiving and distribution center. So the concept that we have not only for the CRDC, but also for the beverage pouring rights, is that these contracts that we're discussing here today, should we move forward, would not be effective until late 2018 time period. And then, as Paula has indicated, our proposal is these would be 10-year agreements. So what we want to do is just alert our concession partners that somewhere between now and 2028, which effectively could be the end of this contract term, circumstances may change to the point that we need to move forward with a consolidated receiving and distribution center. So we're just trying to be transparent with the industry at this point.
My second question is, I disagree on the beverage pouring rights. In a prior life, I ran a restaurant, owned it, and a big portion of my profits was soft drinks. It seems to me, if, pardon me, if you're going to have the exclusive pouring rights, Sky Harbor, one, I think they have national contracts, but that plays a big part of their profit. And if we want them to make a lot of money and get a percentage off of their profit, we are diminishing that pool. And that concerns me. I really, and I would hope that's soft drinks only. I would think we would never want to get into hard liquor.
Mr. Chairman, to Councilwoman Williams, it would be for soft drinks only. And the pouring rights is a trend that we are starting to see in our industry, where airports are beginning to migrate to pouring rights. It's not widely done yet, but there are a couple of very large airports that have migrated to it and have been quite successful. And these vendors that are or that likely will participate here in this solicitation also operate in those airports where they do have pouring rights.
But you would not penalize somebody if they have a national contract for bidding on this, would you?
Well, we don't have those details. Like I said, this is just a reservation of rights for us. So the intent would not be to penalize any of our concessions if we migrated to either of these items during the term of this contract.
You just wouldn't put them out of business if the convention center turns out to make millions. Is that what you're telling me? I've got you confused too.
Yeah, totally.
I know that the convention bureau, our center, just got the beverage rights. And since that's an unknown revenue source, we don't know if that's big bucks or little bucks at this point. I would not want us to leap thinking that we were going to make millions off of this, number one. And then number two, I just have concerns that if it's a national company that bids, like the couple we have now, I find it hard to believe they wouldn't have national agreements with Pepsi or Coke or somebody. And I want to be assured that we can't make them terminate those rights so we could take the business over. I guess it's the simplest way to say it.
And Mr. Chairman, to Councilwoman Williams, those are exactly the kind of discussions that, should we make a recommendation to move forward in the future with something like this, that we would have with the council as well as with our industry partners before we ever put something together.
And when would you do that? At the,
And once again, we have no timeline to do either of these. What we're saying is this is going to be a contract that extends to 2028. We're just trying to be transparent with our industry partners and saying, during that time period, the city may want to explore this, and we're just trying to put you on notice that we want to have that flexibility in the future.
and I understand that, Jim. I just want to make sure that part of that contract says if 5 years from now we want those rights, either you cancel your national contract or whatever covers it, and you're booted out. I just want to be assured that they have that comfort level. Right? If I got you confused again, you got that look.
No, I'm not confused. It's just I can't answer that because we're nowhere near having those concepts in place. This is just purely a reservation of rights
When that time
in the
comes,
future.
when that,
That's
if,
when
if
that
that, if
discussion
that
would
time
take place.
And of course, that discussion, I understand, will take place with the current vendors certainly no decision will be made without the city council approval,
Absolutely.
and you will continue to, do you have anything, Vice Mayor? But
No, I understand what
I-
you're saying.
I
I
do.
just,
And-
I
and-
just wanted to hear.
I-
what all
I-
We
the-
I-
also,
what you're saying as well.
understand exactly what you're saying, but.
And I shared my concern as well, and mine is, I have the same concerns as Councilwoman Williams, and I'm sure the Vice Mayor, and I'll let her speak for herself, but, I never want to see government working as the private sector. The private sector leads the economy. Our job is to support, get out of the way, lower the barriers, and let them do what they do. And so the more successful they are, the more successful we are. And I want to be sure that that happens.
So what I am hearing is that we want to put this in this contract. And we're unsure, or we don't know exactly what that's going to look like. So why would we put it in our contract if we're unsure and unknown what we're going to do? When we know there are current establishments in our airport that have rights, two different rights, two different pouring rights. And what does that do to those businesses if we put this in the contract and at the end of the day, one group gets the pouring rights and the current business in the airport don't have that pouring right, I guess, what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to talk in code, but then what happens? And what's the cost to the business?
Mr. Chairman, to Vice Mayor Pastor, once again, that would be the issues that would be explored should the city elect to move forward with this. Once again, we're just trying to be transparent that we see industry trends that are occurring. We want to be transparent and put these respondents on notice at this point that in the future, we may want to have that conversation and consider that in Phoenix also. And I kind of believe that we ought to tell people that up front instead of come in a few years from now and have that conversation with them not having any knowledge of it. And they're operating, as I mentioned before, they're operating in airports. All of these vendors are operating in airports that have either a consolidated receiving and distribution center, or many of them are operating also in those airports that currently have beverage pouring rights. So it can be done. It's just a question of whether or not it fits in Phoenix, and that's a conversation we would have in the future.
Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee, this is completely as to the pouring rights, this is completely a policy decision of the council. This is, I think Jim is trying to reflect creating flexibility at some future point. I would tell you kind of my position is if we don't raise this now, then really the next time to have the conversation will probably be in 2020, in 2029 when there's a new contract, and that's okay. That's, and I'm not being glib, I'm just being, I think Jim's point about being fair to the concessionaires, telling them there might be a thing we're thinking about, not telling them that up front as they make investments, as they prepare across the time, and we come across the fact that this is how the industry functions, we would be probably constraining ourselves to making a change. But we don't have to do this. We don't do it today, and it's not necessary to do this in this terminal now.
So my question would be, what's the benefit of having beverage pouring rights?
So I guess it is a financial thing for the airport. The percentage rent on food is 13%. So if, let's just say it was $100, it'll be the value of the pouring rights to the business is $100. The city would see 13. If the city has the control of the pouring rights, the city gets $100. And so that's fundamentally how it works. But again, we're under you have absolute authority and discretion now, and you would in the future. and I don't, this is not a issue where it's an, we think it's absolutely, you must have it. We're observing that creating flexibility if times change, but we can do, follow the council's preference. Our recommendation is to have the flexibility, to have a future conversation, not to do something, but just to have a conversation. But we are clearly ready to take your advice and recommendation on it.
Let me see if I've got this clear. You want to move forward, it's not a part of a conversation now, and the contracts could be signed without that in, except for the fact you reserve the right.
We reserve the right to have a future conversation, and it would require future council action.
I'm going to say, to amend the contract, you'd have to bring it back to council if you instituted those two things.
Yes.
Am I right?
Yes,
All right, got it.
and absolutely.
Thank you.
And obviously, and this goes without saying, whether you have that language in there or not, I would always encourage the city to work with our operators, and operators work with their employees and so on and so forth, in order to deliver the best product to the customer. You have something?
I think my questions are probably unknown, and I would like, if they're unknown, I would like to know from other airports, best practices on how they did pouring rights when other companies had other pouring rights. Or A, B, I'm gonna use A, it's easier this way.
Sure.
A or B, if B gets the contract and several of our vendors have A, what is the cost to them? What is the, I mean, I think we need to have answers in order to understand what we're placing in a RSC, RCS. I know that it's the trend, but what in the trend, how did they handle these situations?
And Mr. Chairman, to Vice Mayor Pastor, once again, we are just trying to put one paragraph of notice in these agreements, or when we do the solicitation that says, be aware that during the term of this agreement, the city may elect to have this type of a situation. And if we do that, then we will sit down with those vendors and discuss and try to understand all of that before we would come to council with a recommendation. I can't answer those questions because we have not moved to a stage where we're ready to recommend these two items. We've only started initial research.
But my pushback to you, Jim, is what I heard is this is the way the trend is, and this is the way airports are doing it. And so I'm assuming there's some answers to the questions that we are asking with this language in here. Here's where I'll just say where I have a rub with this, is that we can put this language in the RCS. What will happen is then something will move through, or the city or whoever is wanting to do pouring rights. And then what will happen is either there'll be a new council, or we'll be sitting here, and then what will be told to us by employees is, oh, well, you voted on that, and it was something that you voted on, and here is your voting record on this piece. When then all of a sudden, it's a totally different, I guess, game at that point of when we're starting to make decisions really on what does it look like in the future. And I guess that's where I'm coming from, because I want to be very clear, and I want to understand what I'm voting on. And so that's why I'm pushing in this way to understand.
Mr. Chair, Vice Mayor, maybe my suggestion, I have a suggestion, which is we should answer your question absolutely, period. We know what has transpired at these other airports. We can learn what the other airports have done and what the concessionaires had to do. But it is absolutely correct that we will not be able to answer all the questions. And so in an environment like that where there is a lot of unknowns, we certainly can also not do this. But I would tell you, we certainly, before we would go back to the council, we are happy to come back to the subcommittee and share with you what we know and get your continued advice and feedback based on what the best practices are. That's one way we could do this. Alternatively, I think airport staff will be able to advance the ball forward successfully in Terminal 3 without pouring rights being a provision. My comment about essentially it's called a commissary, is what the consolidated receiving is really is fundamentally driven around a safety and security issue of how many people come through the fence. I would tell you, we've had that come up a number of times. We have been able to solve for it, but as activity changes and adjusts across time, particularly as Homeland Security puts more and different kinds of expectations in the airport, that may become a thing we all need to go pursue. And I would strongly recommend that's a thing that is an operational safety thing, not about a making money thing. And we would still come back to you and share. I would recommend to you, that one feels like it would be a valuable thing to retain the point for conversation. For a subsequent transaction, it would have to be coordinated with the concessionaires and brought to the council. But as to the pouring rights, we could come and answer some more questions. We could also not do this.
More?
And the contracts, after 5 years, don't they have to remodel or redo something?
Councilman Valenzuela and Councilman William, yes, there is a midterm refurbishment in all of the contracts.
What if we amended that slightly and said, at that midterm, that's when you have the conversations can begin? Because then we have enough history under our belt. You can get enough data from the other airports, since this is fairly new, and you would know yay or nay.
Again, that would be entirely fine. Again, that's why we're here talking to you about it, is we'd like to create flexibility, but we also, this isn't a make or break for the concession. It's just an opportunity to reflect if the conditions change nationally. We just didn't want to wait 10 years, but that would be wonderful.
Because if
And
you're going to change things around, that would be the opportune time.
I think
I would believe.
that's a fair observation, Councilwoman.
And Mr. Chairman, to Councilman, I agree with Mr. Blue. That's a excellent idea, and we would certainly welcome that provision and would make sure that it said that. Only, as Mr. Blue mentioned, the only caution that I would have is that we do have an ever-evolving Homeland Security issue.
I'm only talking pouring.
Okay, fine, because,
I think the security issue is day by day, and
Correct.
we don't know what rules come down and what we have to be flexible.
But on
So
pouring rights-
But I understand too, you've always been fair. You would give them ample credit and work with them to make it successful.
pouring rights, that's an excellent idea. Thank you.
Vice Mayor, do you have anything else?
So no, not on that piece.
Okay. We do have one card in favor.
No.
We need
She's
to
got
Oh,
kind
two
of
more.
finish.
Two more slides.
We got a little sidetracked.
That's okay. So we've laid out for you the two retail contracts. They are fairly similar in size and do reflect South Concourse, North Concourse, and lobby locations. And on the food venue, they are not quite the same size, but they also reflect north and south, except for package one that does not have a north location, but it does have a south and lobby. There is one pre-security location to handle all of the employees and meeters and greeters that are in the terminal. So this is the way the terminal will look when it is complete. We've colored food in blue, and package one is dark and package two is lighter blue. And we have retail in green, and the same lighter and darker represent where all of the locations are, and as you can see, they're very well distributed throughout the new terminal. The proposed evaluation criteria is before you. Concepts are 300 points. Concepts drive sales. They are important. And then you can see design and quality of tenant improvements, management and operation experience and qualifications, and of course, the proposed business plan. So early this year, we have been very busy meeting with the industry, and communicating. We've had several business information meetings, several outreach meetings, a fast pitch event, and we hope to issue this RCS once council approves our recommendation in May, and responses would be due in July, and we would be back to you in early 18 to recommend contracts. Construction starting in spring and summer, and hope to match up with the terminal opening in the latter part of 2018.
So, Mr. Chairman, our recommendation is for authority to issue these revenue contract solicitations. Recommend to the City Council that we issue these for 2 food and beverage and 2 retail concepts for the Terminal 3 remodel project. And we will certainly incorporate Councilwoman Williams' provision on the reservation of rights on pouring rights, where it would not occur until after midterm refurbishments.
I go back to the evaluation criteria. I really would like to see the proposed concepts reduced to 250 and experience and qualifications be increased to 200. Still brings you up to the same total. And the reason I'm saying that is the concepts you're going to figure out in the design and the quality of the improvements. The airport and the airline business is changing by the change of size of the aircraft, our new configurations, and I think I want everybody out there to be very successful. And I believe that experience and the qualifications that they demonstrate is a key to that success, and to keeping our passengers happy and making our airlines want to expand their services here. So I really would suggest we modify that.
I would be good with that. We still see the highest, or the heaviest weighted item to be the proposed concept. I do think this is one of the 10 busiest airports in the country, and it continues to grow, and experience and qualifications obviously matter. So I would be okay with those 2 changes, moving the proposed concepts to 250 and putting those 50 points at experience and qualifications, which is what you propose, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Councilwoman Williams would be happy to make that change.
Are you good with that, Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Then I will
think
make a motion.
experiences should
Oh,
be.
sorry. Vice Mayor.
Oh, no, I just saying, I think experience and qualification should be higher.
To move forward to the council, staff's recommendations with adjusted according to the conversations here and adjusting the evaluation criteria.
I want to add a friendly, I guess, amendment, or I
This-
want to add some language to this. And the language that I would like to add is, do you currently have an agreement in place that would prohibit a labor organization from engaging in strikes, picketing, or other economic actions at the concession operation herein proposed? And then it says, if yes, please list the name of the labor organization or organizations by the agreement.
You just want that information to be
Yeah,
included to
it's
come
just
back to the
information.
council prior to the motion going forward? Am I hearing you right, to council? Or you want that information included in council's packet?
I want that information included in the RCS. I think that's what it is.
Which would put it in the council's packet, correct?
Which would
I apologize.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee, if it is located in the RCS, then it would be submitted with the proposals that come to the airport. Staff would respond to the evaluation criteria and share what the proposal said about the evaluation criteria as listed above, and that's what would come to the council.
I guess I'm cautious on how this proceeds. I don't want it interpreted that they need that, or we support that. I don't even know if it's happening. So
Well,
I think that we need the answer. I just don't know if we want a formal motion to move this to council.
I would like it in the RCS.
So that goes out on the bids?
Well, it's part of the bids. There will be no points. There will be, won't affect anybody's score. It's just part of knowledge for employees and disclosure and transparency. Other airports do it. We have one very similar that's to us, that's the same size, and that is Houston. And so there you can go look at Houston, also San Francisco. So that is language that's already in the industry. So I would like to include it in our RCS.
Can you get us the research and what the language actually is?
Mr. Chairman, to Councilwoman Williams, we could do that research and get that. But if this is Mr. Chairman, to Vice Mayor Pastor, if I understand you correctly, this is just submitted as an informational item and
Correct.
not as an evaluation piece.
Correct.
Then I don't see a problem with that because we do ask as part of these RCSs for other informational items that are not evaluated. So if that's the council's desire, then we could try to capture the language and do that. Certainly.
Correct. That's exactly. Thank you.
Can we talk a little bit about the retention? What's the retention? What
Councilman
policy?
Venezuela, the RCS will contain our traditional employee retention policy, which is 90 days in the same job classification.
Tough economy. We went through a recession. Many of these airport employees, in fact, I'm going to the airport from here. I'll be wearing that purple jacket as a navigator for a few hours.
Don't trust him. Put a little sign on
You
it.
do not want to ask me questions. I'll have an actual navigator with me. But
How do I get my ticket? Sorry.
I'm going to
Where am
send
I?
the vice mayor to Houston and then San Francisco. So,
Those are great cities.
but I want to be sure that, again, we want to support the operators. We want to encourage the operators to support the employees. And at the end of the day, I think what we'll see is the best possible product for the customer. The people who live in Phoenix, most importantly, but also the 100,000 visitors that come through every single day. And our image does matter. And so we want our employees to feel supported. And I would ask, if it's okay with my colleagues, to move that 90 days to 120 days. Do you see an issue with that, Mr. Bennett?
Mr. Chairman, I don't see an issue with expanding it from 90 to 120 days. I think we had on this most recent transition, I think we have some statistics on this most recent transaction of how many people took advantage of that opportunity. Paula, do you want to share that?
As the stores closed and the new operators came on board, many of them retained their staff. So we actually created a pool that was monitored, and by job classification, we had 12 people that ended up in the pool. All of them were hired. So, the pool right now is vacant. So now as we go to phase two, as you just moved that forward, those employees that were not retained by their current employers would go into that pool and be available for the next group of employers.
Great. I mean, that's great news. Thank you for the information. That said, it sounds like 120 days would be
Okay.
okay.
I think, to a point to that is that, our operators provide a lot of training, and I just think, being in the airport industry is, tasking to many people, and, you have to find really good employees that understand the nuances of an airport and are able to, adhere to the 4:30, 4 o'clock hours to, I think it's 11:30, something like that. And the crazy the different shifts and all the things that go along with it. And when you find a good employee and they're good and they're accountable, and responsible, you want to keep that employee. And I think also for the employee's sake, when they go through these changes, it is a change for the employees. They are shifting, new operators, and it can be, high anxiety and stressful for them. And to know that, it's a seamless transition is great for the operator and the employee. So I look at this as a good win. So thank you.
Okay.
We vote?
So that's the motion. You have it all captured. That's the motion. We do have a second.
You have all those,
I think this is great. We can get all in favor, say aye.
aye.
All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. I'm sorry. But I do have one card, but marked in favor, not wishing to speak. So I think we'll be fine with that. Ms. Carla Whitmer? Okay, great. Thank you
you.
so much. I appreciate it. Now, one of the great things about being on the city council, we're about to see, right now in this particular subcommittee, because we have lots of neighborhood leaders here for the next one. It's really great how we can talk about this, our largest economic engine, and then go right into something that's impacting our neighborhoods, which I feel is, what is most important to our city and our community. So with that, I would ask Mr. Alan Stevenson to join us, Ms. Sandy Hoffman, and Ms. Raquel Escolar. And this is Group Facilities Text Amendment.
Thank you, Chairman Valenzuela, members of the subcommittee. We do have a brief PowerPoint presentation here that we'll run through real quickly. This proposed text amendment deals with group facilities, and the purpose of it is to ensure compliance with the Federal Fair Housing Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act, to incorporate a reasonable accommodation provision pursuant to federal law, as well as to modernize our definitions and regulations to conform with state and industry standards. You will recall that in early 2015, the city had a couple of challenges, one from the federal government, from the Department of Justice regarding our group home spacing requirements. The other one was from a private entity who was conducting a sober living facility in District 2 that the Neighborhood Services Department was investigating, and their attorney sent us a letter about that. So what happened at that time in July of 2015, the city stopped enforcing its quarter-mile spacing requirements at the advice of the law department because we did not have a reasonable accommodation. And so this text amendment does propose that, as well as these other items that are up here on the screen. In terms of how staff got to this standpoint, we did do a lot of research under federal and state laws, the case law that's out there on advice of the law department, as well as joint statements from HUD and the Department of Justice regarding group homes, state licensing requirements, looked at our ZA applications, interpretations, and other published documents related to this. We did do some significant research into other jurisdictions as well. You'll hear a little bit more from Russell in a few moments on Prescott and Gilbert, because those are two examples that neighborhood folks have brought up to us as good examples. So we're going to have a little summary of those so you can understand a little about what's in there as well. I should note in terms of the changes here, it's that reasonable accommodation we talked about. Definitions, we hadn't updated this group home language since the 50s and 60s timeframe, and so we still called everything a handicapped group home. even though the private sector had new names for things, the state, who does a significant amount of regulation of a number of these facilities, had different terminology. So this is trying to bring our terminology and definitions up to date with those, as well as clarify some of our regulations. I think one of the things that you'll hear from the neighbors and looking at what other jurisdictions have done too when Rossell presents that is there's a zoning component to this, but there's also other regulatory components that other cities have done to really look at how you manage these facilities once they're established, in a neighborhood. And those are things that aren't necessarily part of the zoning ordinance, but they are things that are in the city's purview that need to be weighed by the mayor and council as you look at these items. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sandy to walk us through the reasonable accommodations and the elements in the proposed text amendment and quickly kind of summarize neighborhood concerns. And then Rossell is going to talk about what's in the Prescott ordinance for their sober living and the Gilbert group home ordinance.
Thank you. So the reasonable accommodation is the most pressing matter that we have that is motivating us to do this text amendment. The city and other jurisdictions have been challenged over the last few years regarding reasonable accommodation and meeting the requirements by the Fair Housing Act. So when we got the notice from the Department of Justice in 2015, we have stopped enforcing our spacing requirement because we don't have that reasonable accommodation element in our code. The federal government recommends that we should have objective criteria and the process should not be burdensome or discriminatory. So the reasonable accommodation includes a graphic here that shows that we will evaluate if somebody were to request a reasonable accommodation, if there are 5 or less homes within the half-mile area, and if those homes are not counted, if they're separated by the elements such as major canals, freeways, arterial streets, a municipal open space of 5 acres or greater, and if they are, then staff can approve a reasonable accommodation. If it is denied, the applicant has the ability to appeal that to the Planning Development Department Director. There's some other elements that they can consider listed on the screen there, and will evaluate based on the input from the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice has given direction that the procedures cannot be onerous or require information beyond what is necessary to show that an individual with disability that is requested an accommodation has been met to address that, and that the granting of the accommodation will not impose undue financial burden on the local government and will not fundamentally alter the government zoning scheme. As Alan mentioned, what we did was we modernized the terminology. So where we had said handicap, we are now saying disability or disabled. The group home for the handicapped has now been broken down into 3 different terms: assisted living, residential care, and sober living homes. Those uses are currently being allowed under the title group home for the handicapped. So there's no change in regards to that. It's just breaking down the terminology. And then, of course, changing personal care homes to an assisted living or a residential care facility. The other definitions that we're working on and changing through the text amendment would be adding adult daycare. Again, this is something that our demographics are having a need for, and we need to have that included in our ordinance to address that. We have also group foster care homes, again, matching what the state has for how they do licensing so that there's commonality between the terminology that we're using. We did propose taking out foster home because they're treated as a family, and so we removed that, and rooming house as well because they're covered under our group home regulations. The one thing that came from the state is that there's,
Do you have juveniles in there?
the foster care, yes, we didn't modify that much. I mean, the foster care for under a certain number.
I don't know if it's considered foster care, is where I'm headed. They have daycare centers for juveniles, especially those on probation. Where do they fall in there? Or do they?
Or,
So Chairman Valenzuela, Councilman Williams, we are not making any changes to any of the group regulations related to folks, whether they're juvenile or not, who are under some type of probationary program from the state. So all of these proposed changes do not address any of those. They still would be considered a correctional transitional housing facility. And so that's where those types of individuals would have to go under some court-ordered care supervision system. One of the things that the city can't do is if someone's accused of something that would be in one of these facilities, we can't do anything to preclude them from locating in one of these facilities.
I mean, these just aren't accused. These are people that have gone through the court system, adjudicated.
Right, and so
Whatever.
those ones are part of a correctional transitional housing, so they're not making any changes to that.
Okay. Thank you.
So one of the things that has occurred is the state has passed regulations that say that if you're a developmentally disabled home, you're allowed to have up to 6 residents in your home and be considered a family and must be treated as a family. So our text amendment is changing our number from 1 to 5 to 1 to 6 to, again, to be consistent with what the state regulations have for the developmentally disabled. We also changed a few little things regarding, again, the terminology primarily in multifamily housing. And so we were consistent throughout our multifamily districts and how we apply the regulations for group homes. We added the adult daycare, as I mentioned, and we added hospice because, again, that's a common term that are being used and we needed to address that need. We had outreach to various stakeholder groups. The first outreach we had with our draft as we were just developing it was with the Arizona Department of Health Services and the Department of Child Safety. So again, we were working with the state agencies to make sure that we were consistent in how we tried to do the enforcements and use the terminology. We have had various village planning committee meetings, and some of them are still considering the group home text amendment. And we've also had neighborhood leader meetings. There's 3 of them that we've held since we had the Planning Commission in February and providing feedback to us. We anticipate with the schedule to go next week to the Planning Commission for action, and then in June to the subcommittee again for action, and then back to City Council for the full decision. So just generally, overview of the feedback that we got, we heard primarily 2 categories. Those are related to the zoning issues and the zoning ordinance, and others are related to the group home oversight. So the zoning issues, again, related to, and what we heard was that the concern about changing the number from 1 to 5 to 1 to 6, that would be treated as a single family would be treated. Reasonable accommodation, some concerns raised about that and how we might apply that. And then the intensity of the uses in the residential neighborhoods, and are they really a business or not a business? For group home oversight, the concerns that we heard, some of them again, and I'm sure the neighbors will articulate a lot clearer than myself, regarding inconsistent management and the operations that might occur, the disabled residents not being treated in a manner that could support them in the best way, and perhaps looking at a way to have a business license or some kind of tax program that could be utilized. With that, I'll have Russell move forward with talking about Prescott and Gilbert.
Good morning, subcommittee members. So Prescott updated their ordinance in 2015. Their zoning ordinance regulations included changing the number of residents that they consider a family to 4. And then they have 2 categories for homes for individuals with disabilities. There's a family community residence and a transitional community residence. So there's a 5 to 12 resident category that would require 800 feet spacing from each home, and then licensing or certification. And then the transitional also requires 800 feet spacing, licensing, certification, and a conditional use permit. They do have a provision in their ordinance that if the state allows a lesser zoning, then they would adhere to that as well. A good example of that would be for homes for developmentally disabled, which allows up to 6 residents, so to be treated as a family, so they wouldn't consider that a family community residence. They also have reasonable accommodations that are performance-based. This next slide here covers their 5 criteria for requesting a reasonable accommodation. This request is specifically to request to have a home for more than 12 residents. This is what they have documented in their ordinance. However, they would still accept reasonable accommodation requests if somebody wanted to locate closer than 800 feet. They also have a an appeal process. So if that reasonable accommodation was denied, then the appeal would go to their department director or the director's designee. They also included as part of their zoning update off-street parking requirements. So it's based on the structure of the home. So there's different criteria based on if it's a house, a duplex, apartment, and so on. And based on the number of staff present and if there are residents that are permitted to have a vehicle on premises. They also, beyond zoning, updated their building code and then business licensing regulations as well. As far as Gilbert, they recently updated their zoning ordinance earlier this year. They have two categories for individuals with disabilities. They have a group home for the handicapped, which is a term that we currently use, and then also recovery residents. So for a group home for the handicapped, the maximum number of residents is 5 unless the state allows up to 10. They require 1,200 feet spacing between homes. And with their spacing provision, they exclude separation by either utility right-of-way that's 300 feet or more, freeway, arterial streets, canals, and railroads. A state license is required for a group home for the handicapped, and services must be provided to the residents only. You can't have other people receive services and come to the home. And then as far as their recovery resident standards, they have registration and standards per the new state statute for structured sober living homes. These have a maximum of 5 residents, and the same spacing guidelines apply. Gilbert also has a reasonable accommodation request procedure. This was actually updated in their ordinance in 2014. So the only change that they made to their reasonable accommodation provision recently was that they would not consider economic viability into considering the accommodation. So what they consider is they look at whether the accommodation should be made pursuant to fair housing laws, and if so, the nature of the accommodation considering the Fair Housing Act, public safety and welfare concern, and residential character of the neighborhood. That concludes our presentation. If there's any questions.
We do have, I'm sure you're going to get questions, but we have several cards too. Is it okay with my colleagues if we go to the cards? First one is Pam Fitzgerald, who is donating her time to Jeff Spellman. We'll keep it in D5. Come on over, Jeff. It's good seeing you both.
All right. Good morning, Councilman Valenzuela and members of the subcommittee. I'm a member of Take Action Phoenix. A number of our members are here this morning. I'm also a team lead for the Violence Impact Project, which has now transitioned from a project that Councilman Valenzuela brought to our area to now a community-driven effort. And so staff has actually done a pretty good job of presenting information and facts about this issue and what the laws are. But really what's been proposed in the text amendment does nothing to address the concerns brought forward in the 3 public meetings that happened subsequent to the Alhambra Village Planning Committee. Planning Department held 3 meetings where we asked questions over and over and over again that still weren't answered for us, okay? And none of those recommendations that we brought forward in those meetings have been included in the text amendment. So that's where we have issue with that. In District 5, we first learned about this issue where I live at when we were trying to figure out why were we having so much crime issues, panhandling issues, drug issues, prostitution. And a lot of people in the community were pointing to the methadone clinic at 23rd Avenue and Northern. It was after we had a community meeting where our local neighborhood police officers were at that said, that is not the problem. The methadone clinic is not the problem in your neighborhood. If you want to know where the crime is coming from, go look at the proliferation of sober living homes in your area. So that's when I first got kind of in tune to this issue. One of our members from the committee did some research because the big problem is The city just doesn't know how many sober living homes there are. Unless they're over the threshold and regulated by the state, the city has no idea how many unregistered homes there are. We started doing some research. One of our members did some research in our immediate area. In a 7 square mile area, there's 100 sober living homes. In our area, a little bit closer to home, in a 1/4 mile area, there's 9 unregistered sober living homes. That's a lot clustered in a small area. And so that becomes a big part of the issue. We just don't know how many there are. And secondly, in the course of these meetings, we were constantly told by staff that the state law that was passed, called the Structured Sober Living Homes Law, that allows municipalities to adopt safety and health ordinances, was a violation, and that the laws passed like by Prescott and Gilbert were also in violation of the Fair Housing Act. We said, how are they in violation of the Fair Housing Act? And we were constantly told, we don't know why they are, but the lawyers from the city tell us they are. I don't think that's a very acceptable answer to us. So we contacted HUD. We called over to San Francisco and talked to the Fair Housing staff, and they referred us to the DOJ joint statement, which you heard about, which clearly states that state and local governments' enforcement of neutral requirements regarding safety, licensing, and other regulatory requirements governing group homes do not violate the Fair Housing Act. So you can do it. So we believe a good start, part of what's proposed in here is probably okay. We believe a good start towards solving this issue would be to first and foremost keep the number of occupants in unregistered sober living homes at 5 through the text amendment process. If you increase it to 6, you immediately provide the opportunity for that concentration to increase even more, because they will not be regulated in any way if you increase that number of people living in a single-family structured living home to 6, okay? Secondly, by requiring registration, we think all sober living homes should be registered. Phoenix can begin to get a handle on just how many of these facilities are located throughout the city and where they're concentrated, so that certain neighborhoods don't become institutionalized with the clustering of these homes. Secondly, and I guess lastly, is you really don't need to recreate the wheel. You can see an information staff provided to you. Other cities like Prescott have already created these health and safety ordinances that are allowed by state law. Many cities around the country have passed ordinances as well. Phoenix can do it too. And we look forward to working collaboratively to address these growing concerns through the city. So even after the public meetings, a number of us have had additional meetings with staff, talking to them about what logically could be done and accomplished through the text amendment, what sort of things might need additional actions as they talked about business licensing, other regulation, maybe a new, completely new city ordinance to address this issue. And, but the issue is that staff isn't going to propose those things to you, okay? They're going to take the most absolute conservative road that they can. We need you to push the envelope a little bit. And they told us flat out that unless council gives direction to staff to pursue these issues in ways that will help to rectify the situation and create safety not only for the neighborhoods but also for the people living in those facilities, that they're not going to do it. So you guys, as our elected representatives, we need you to direct staff to make these changes and make these suggestions. So in summary, the things that probably can happen, we believe, through the text amendment and keep it moving is, one, keep that maximum occupants allowed in an unregistered sober living home at 5, and as they suggested, provide reasonable accommodations for more than that, that would then allow the city to go back to enforcing the distance requirements, okay? What has to happen separately, probably, from this that can't be included in the text amendment will probably require you to come up with a new ordinance, and we need your help in getting that process started as well. So you just take the ordinance that Prescott put into place, and there you've got a good example. It's been held up, it's in process, the staff it's operating. You can go right online and see how it works, how you register, how you provide complaints about them. They've put it all into place already. You've already got a model there that's working. And that process essentially requires registration of all sober living homes, regardless of how many people live in them. And it also implements health and safety standards to protect those in recovery. So it's about the people who live there, as well as the people in the neighborhoods and the character of our neighborhoods. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Spellman, and I gave you extra time because I found a couple of others. Linda Colino, thank you so much for being here, and Maria Ewing, who knows quite a bit about our city, but certainly the neighborhoods. Retired city employee. Thank you for being here. Both donated their time to you, and I can see why, so thank you.
Thank you.
I do have other cards.
As you read that, can we get legal here? Or is,
Yeah, so Councilman Valenzuela and Vice Mayor Pastor, we certainly can have them here because it is a issue that my hunch will be they would rather that any discussions regarding this take place in executive session because of the potential for lawsuits regarding this, but we can
And
certainly.
this item is for information, and it will come back to this particular subcommittee before action, so maybe we
Okay.
can get those conversations.
Correct.
I'm with you, yeah.
I
I guess what I would like, let me get clear. I would like legal is because constituents have said that that staff has said due to legal that I think they need to hear from the legal side as to why this decision was made. So that's just where I'm coming from. We can have another meeting to do that, but I'm just trying to understand.
So, Chairman Valenzuela, like Vice Mayor Pastor, maybe what would be helpful is if the subcommittee wants to direct staff to look at, in consultation with the law department, because they provide advice to staff of kind of laying out an argument and then maybe looking at what could be done. Because I think that's really
What I wanna
you'll
do
hear
is-
from the neighbors is they want to know, well, what can you do?
So speaking of that, I want to let the neighbors continue to speak, and though this is for information only, we can certainly give you some of our, want to share our thoughts with you. I'm sure each of us want to do that. So we'll go on to Janice Morton. Okay, Larissa Betterama. Oh, that's an L, I'm sorry, Valderrama. Come on over. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Larissa Balderrama. I'm a block watch leader for Rancho Saguaro Block Watch at about 56th Street and Cactus Road, if you're familiar with the area by PV Mall. I want to talk to, you noticed in some of the ordinances from Gilbert and Prescott, they talked specifically about the character of the neighborhoods staying intact. So I'd like to share with you how the character of my neighborhood has changed since an unregistered sober living home has moved in next door to me last November. A little bit about just my credentials of knowing my neighborhood. I don't work full time. When I do, I work from home. I jog my neighborhoods many times a week. I have a little dog. I walk 4 times a day without fail. She insists. So I'm very in tune to the character of my neighborhood. I'm on the streets and among the neighbors every day. So I know what goes on. In the time since the sober living home has moved in next door, we have 2 within 323 feet of each other, both unregistered, unregulated. I'll speak specifically to the one next door to me on my street. I have a long list of items of issues that have occurred, and I'll just kind of read through them. I won't try not to go over my time, so I may go quickly. Since they have moved in, I experience daily cigarette smoke in my backyard from the smokers next door. As many as 10 men, it's a home for men, live next door, and they can only smoke in their backyard. So it comes into my yard, which changes my quality of life, as you can imagine. Marijuana smoke in my backyard, which has been smelled multiple times. I've reported it to the police one time. This impacts my quality of life. I cannot be outside. My husband has a very important job. He works in nuclear. They have a 0 tolerance policy for drugs. So you can imagine they do random drug testing. He can't use our backyard when that's going on. So I feel like I'm not allowed to use my own space. We have littering of cigarette butts on the street. We witness residents all the time walking down the street flicking them into the road, littering. We have the privilege of knowing the housing director for the sober living home next door, and we call him all the time when we have issues. However, they have given our first name and location out to residents when we've complained, and residents have showed up at our front door. We've had our mailbox knocked over. I don't know by who, but it was the day after we made a complaint. We have witnessed we have an alley at the end of our street. We witnessed many individuals in the alley hanging out. Once was witnessed them smoking marijuana by another resident. We placed multiple calls for people in the alley. This didn't exist before the home moved in. The most recent call on March 16th reported to police resulted in a drug arrest. We've had multiple parking issues. Speeding, a lot of traffic has been increased. Uber and Lyft and people coming to pick residents up who don't own cars. I counted 20 in one day just on our street at the sober living home next door. We hadn't had traffic on our street like that before. I have personally experienced harassing behavior from a resident looking me up and down in a lewd sexual way while I'm walking my dog. Another resident on our street had a resident from the home shouting lewd comments to her while she was in front of her home. Another resident was almost hit by one of the people driving too fast down the street. That was reported to police. I've had bike tracks running through my front yard from the residents next door who walk or ride bikes running up to my house late at night, unexplained. So you can understand, I have more on the list, but I don't want to run out of time. As you can see, the character of my neighborhood in just a few short months has changed dramatically as a result of unregistered and unregulated home living next door. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Balderrama. Obviously, an issue that's happening citywide is Mr. Spellman and Mr. Balderrama live several miles apart in this large city. The next speaker is Ken Kennegas.
Good morning. My name's Ken Kennegas, and I live in the area of 31st Avenue between Bethany Home and Glendale. This issue, I'm kind of new to the issue. I came here because it was informational. There has been a lot of discussion in the neighborhood association and on neighborhood social media about these group homes. And I want to state my concern. On the one hand, I hear a lot of things about we need to improve the quality of life and help the people that are in these homes because they're going through trying to make some difficult transitions. I totally agree with that. Yeah. And an ordinance that will impose health and safety requirements, supervision requirements, all can do that, can help in that direction, and I would be in favor of that. But I also see such an ordinance as possibly a double-edged sword. It really, to my way of thinking, seems that the determining thing is, is there funding available to make sure that these services actually take place? Because if there isn't, then you have a mechanism for shutting them down, which, to my way of thinking, is going to increase a parallel problem, which we're also talking about, and that's homelessness. So I'm in favor of an ordinance which is going to do the things it says it does, but there has to be mechanisms to allow that to happen. I was told that in Prescott, it's the registration fees. I'm curious, what are those registration fees? How is that going to provide the services required? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kennegas. Please join us for future meetings as well. We have one more speaker. Frank Dossel is donating time to Wally Graham.
Good morning. My name is Wally Graham. I'm president of the Arcadia Osborne neighborhood association. I got involved in the committee because I've done a lot of work with zoning kinds of things, and Alan and Sandra and I are friends to some degree. We don't agree on everything, but we try to keep it cordial. And so I volunteered to join this committee. The committee is made up of some of the best people I've worked with in a kind of extemporaneous basis. We have put together a position paper, and we did that because we felt like we were not being heard. And it's not an opposition paper. It really truly is a well-researched paper with data, with information. We went out and found ordinances. We found a number of articles. We published all of these things. We have a website, and we have done a lot of talking with people. We presented to each of the council members the position paper. And what I'd like to offer to you is we have talented people who our voices are not being heard in the text amendment revisions. What we'd like to do, and I'm going to make a request that you think about, not necessarily answer today, but we would like to be at the table and provide a presentation to you at the next DAEI meeting and at the city council meeting. We think that residents should be heard. And it's not just at the come up to the mic and try to get it all in 2 minutes. We think our position paper has a lot of information that would provide a perspective. And what we got was, it doesn't work, it doesn't fit, the lawyers say, well, we said, well, come on, bring the lawyers down, let them talk to us in a meeting. We could never get that kind of openness. We believe this requires true dialogue to help both the residents of the group homes and help residents of neighborhoods. This cannot be a situation where we only take care of one side of the coin. What we're starting to see in neighborhoods right now is a proliferation of group homes. I sent Alan a note the other day. 2 group homes are being put in adjacent, on the same street, in a cul-de-sac with 6 houses. 2 homes were bought by a California developer. He wants to put in mentally ill group residents, and we believe that there is a place for those folks to live. We really, truly want that to happen. But there is a quarter-mile separation in the ordinance today. And what Alan and Sandra have told us is they're not enforcing the ordinance. Therefore, these 2 homes will be grandfathered in whatever occurs after this. So what we'd like to do is be at the table to present our side at the next meeting and at the city council meeting so you can hear what it is residents want to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Graham. That concludes the cards that we have. And this has been an obviously very important topic for, I'm sure, all of us and others. I mean, you know, I know Councilman Stark is another one that the area where our first speaker spoke, just maybe a couple miles, maybe 4 miles east is a different District 3, and so Deborah Stark and I have been working on some stuff in that area as well, that Sunny Slope area, and so I'm well aware of the position paper that has been submitted. You know, this is for information only, and here's a little feedback. I'd like to see the planning department, planning staff work with law enforcement on this issue, and I would also like to see a working committee with our neighborhood leaders and representatives with expertise in this area from the city, state, federal government to review the neighborhood position paper and come back with recommendations to this particular subcommittee. Now, when I think of the timing, obviously we have one more subcommittee in June. We have to get it right. I don't know if it's possible to come back with something that we can actually sink our teeth into. In June, I think we give it a shot, but I know that it is going to be possible, being that we are already, you know, this far along in this year, it may be something, we do have a council break coming up, it may be something that we have to really jump into and thoroughly examine through the summer as well. That, I know that that's a possibility. I don't want this to be put off, as opposed to trying to get it back to this subcommittee much sooner than that. But I guess what I'm trying to do is, I want especially our staff to know that obviously this problem isn't going away, and we have to continue to work diligently with our community leaders and experts in this area to try to get this resolved. Any other questions or comments from my colleagues?
I have several
Vice Mayor?
questions. One question is the city currently out of compliance with the ADA on this issue?
So Chairman Valenzuela and Councilwoman, or Vice Mayor Pastor, I think the law department's advice to us is that without a reasonable accommodation provision in our ordinance, that we don't comply with the Federal Fair Housing Act. And so that was why their advice was to suspend enforcement of the quarter-mile spacing requirements. I don't think they would say that the whole thing is not in compliance, but I think that provision is something that causes them concerns.
Okay. So you use the term reasonable accommodation. What does that mean?
So the reasonable accommodation language is something that comes from the Federal Fair Housing Act, and it gets discussed at length within the Department of Justice guiding document along with HUD. And what it comes down to is that if you have a protected class, someone with a disability, in this case, alcoholism and drug addiction are protected classes, the city has to make a reasonable accommodation. There's no definitive reasonable accommodation is X. It is you have to have in place the ability to have someone review what those requirements are and determine if the application of your requirements are disproportionately impacting a person in that protected class, and be able to say that because it is disproportionately impacting them, that you cannot, the city will not apply that regulation to them. And so even in the Gilbert and Prescott examples, they have reasonable accommodations built in so that a provider of these can make their case that the way the application of the ordinance applies to them is discriminatory, and then the city has to review that and make a determination, and then could waive that application of that ordinance provision.
That's a lot of, I got lost. I don't know at what point, but I got lost at a certain point. And I think we probably really have, I don't know where we do this, but have a understanding of everything. Because then my next question is, how can we ensure that we are providing one?
So Chairman Valenzuela, Vice Mayor Pastor, using a couple of examples that we talked about here today, example of a reasonable accommodation could be in the Prescott ordinance that was discussed. They define a family as four or less is a family. Above that, if you're four unrelated persons, you're not considered a family. And so therefore, that's when their regulations kick in. The state statute that applies for persons with disability says that 6 is that magic number for group homes with persons with disability. So in the example of the Prescott ordinance, somebody could come in, the Prescott ordinance contemplates and says, we will make a reasonable accommodation if someone says, you know what, I have a home for disabled folks, and it's 6, I'm in compliance with the state law, not in compliance with the Prescott ordinance. Prescott would issue a reasonable accommodation in that example. Another example would be our spacing requirements that we talked about, and Ms. Hoffman showed the map and showing where that quarter-mile spacing requirement is. And so in the ordinance as it sits today, we don't make an accommodation. You have to meet that quarter-mile spacing requirement, or you can't locate your facility. And so what the advice of the law department is, you have to come up with some criteria that you could evaluate to say, you know what, if you look at the quarter-mile spacing requirement, just as the crow flies, you could maybe locate one here because there's a canal or some big physical impediment to it. That means it really isn't creating a clustering impact. And that's what the ordinance is trying to do, to provide, in that case, a reasonable accommodation for the spacing requirement. Because if you just looked at a map, that quarter-mile spacing requirement, because of the physical barrier, isn't as impactful as what would be if there was one in the middle of a neighborhood and you had to have another one that was within that quarter mile, but maybe 3 streets up that are just local neighborhood streets.
So what I just heard regarding the 5 to 6, why can't we do the 5? And they come in and they ask, what I heard from you was at Prescott, they come in and they say, we're not in compliance with the Prescott ordinance. However, we are in compliance with the state ordinance. And that at that moment is a reasonable accommodation. Why don't we just put 5 so that then we know what is happening within our neighborhoods, and we're then able to document and identify or create a register as to where this, I don't want to call it clustering, but where it is, what a neighborhood looks like. I guess a visual or an analysis of what a neighborhood looks like.
So Chairman Valenzuela and Vice Mayor Pastor, I think that is something that the council could direct staff to do and look at in terms of bringing that number down. I think there are concerns because of that state statute for homes for developmentally disabled that gives them 6, that someone could make a claim of disparate treatment because they are a group home for physically, mentally disabled instead of physically disabled folks. And so because the state statute grants them an exemption at 6, that we would be treating those other ones differently. And that's why staff selected the 6 to be consistent across the board. But I think certainly if the council wants to come back and do something different, that's part of that discussion, that direction we take from you, and then also discuss that with the law department and what I imagine will be a future e-session and other discussions on this particular matter.
Okay. I'm going to request that there's a full council agenda to discuss the state and federal legislations on this issue. And then I would like for staff to prepare an analysis of what we could do similar to the Prescott Sober Living Ordinance. I don't know exactly, I would like to discuss the 5 versus 6. But do I give you the directive, or how does this? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So, Chairman Valenzuela, Councilwoman or Vice Mayor Pastor, correct. We understand that. We'll have to come back, and this body can vote in June. So we will take that information back and talk about it with the law department. But certainly, as this moves forward, you guys will be the ones to make that determination of is it 5 or 6.
Thank you, Ellen.
Chair?
Councilwoman?
Actually, I'd like you to do that with the Gilbert ordinance.
Okay.
I would also like you to pursue some research on how to do a registry and what type of fee it would take to have that, and make it as simple as possible. I absolutely believe there needs to be a spacing requirement, a process we go through. You can't be a great leader if you never take a risk. And some things are worth taking the risk for, and I think this is something that is very important to maintain the integrity of our neighborhoods. And if it's more enforcement we need, then you need to bring that back as well. If we need to beef up building codes, if you're going to have so many unrelated people, there needs to be square footage allowed per person for a bed or whatever as well. I would think we'd want to upgrade the fire code so that we know that everybody's in compliance, and that I think that's one way. By having them register, we ensure that but that's all met, that they're safe, because we need to protect the people that's in it as well as the neighbors. So I would really like to see, I know that Representative Carter has been working at the legislature. She hasn't had a lot of success, but she hasn't given up yet. And if this doesn't work, then we work with her, and evidently the representatives in Gilbert would probably be behind this, as well as Prescott, and make sure we get the legislation changed in the next session. So that's my comments.
And to that point, I think that that's where we bring in the league and we start working these pieces, since we're members of the league, and work with our legislators in our cities to really provide some understanding to legislators the importance of good language for our neighborhoods. My other question was, the two homes that got purchased and are living in a cul-de-sac or in the process of a cul-de-sac, because I understand that nuance, because that's happening now in District 4, and the challenges that the neighbors are having, and also the kind of retribution that they're receiving because they're calling the cops and complaining, and things that are happening to them and their property. How is this house grandfathered or considered grandfathered?
So, Chairman Valenzuela, Vice Mayor Pastor, because it is going through the process, I believe one of them is under construction and the other one has had permits issued, but might not be under construction just yet, but is close. Because they came in during the time period when we're not enforcing the quarter-mile spacing requirements, they have done all the other requirements. For example, they have to put in sprinklers. Their plans they submitted show that they're proposed as group homes. So we don't have any authority to not issue them permits because we're not enforcing that quarter-mile spacing requirement. So they've been given the ability to go forward, and once those are constructed, we wouldn't be able to go in and retroactively make this ordinance now apply to them, because they would be grandfathered in, similar to other uses that get established prior to laws changing. They operate as long as they continuously operate under those old rules. Now, if one of them went away and then decided and was non-operational for a period of 180 days, then their grandfathered rights to be a legal non-conforming use would go away, and they would not be able to reestablish that under the new ordinance.
It sounds like because we don't have the new ordinance and we're not going to enforce the new ordinance, that's how they're grandfathered.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so plenty of feedback, great feedback from our neighborhood leaders, and I think we got some, I hope you feel like this was productive and constructive, and we're looking forward to hearing this back. We'll keep all of our neighborhood leaders abreast of any dates, and hopefully, they'll know before we do, because our city staff is reaching out to meet with some of them, and that would be ideal. No other questions or comments from my colleagues, no other cards. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to, excuse me.
Any agenda items?
Yeah, we do have the call to the public, which we have none for the final call to the public. Future agenda items. Any requests of future agenda items from my colleagues? Hearing none, I know we all get briefings. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.